We literally left off on the point that the AG, in his press conference, his relatively short press conference, that he made a great pains to point out the fact that 5 out of 8 judges, Karen, agreed with the government's position. Don't mind the fact that 3 out of 5 Privy Council judges did not agree, and he wants to put he's grouping the appeal court judges in with regards to, well, look, their legal opinion matters, and he even gave his judges kudos, right, with regards to their capability. But I think, one of the things you want to point out is the fact that, look, at the end of the day, the appeal court judges are the appeal court judges, and the Privy Council bench is your Privy Council Judicial Committee, and that is the final court of appeal for many a reason, and you can't just group them together. Am I wrong?
You're not only not wrong, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is, listen, it's embarrassing. And for the Attorney General to even stoop that low, it really is doing himself such an injustice. We have a system. It's not a game of numbers, It's not a game of numbers. It's a question of judicial hierarchy. You did that in year 1, because I was in year 1 in Faculty of Law, not in the same year as you, but we all have to do Introduction to Legal Systems. And that is why there's something called an appeal. You appeal, so as you go up the appeal system, our highest court of appeal is the Privy Council. And Mr. Attorney General, because I'm sure you did it in your private practice, and I'm sure it's done by all lawyers, that when you want to persuade our court of appeal on a matter, oftentimes, who do we go to? Our highest court. We go to the decision, unless it stopped at the Court of Appeal in Trinidad. If it went to the Privy Council, even if it went to what they call the Supreme Court, which is the House of Lords as it was, when we want to quote and use as the highest authority that has overturned, because that's what it does. When you go up the ladder, you are overturning the decision of the lower court. The only person court that can overturn itself, as it has in the death penalty case that you would be very aware of, overturn itself, is the Privy Council. So when you go to court, Mr. Attorney General, and your lawyers go to court, and when you go to court, and when lawyers go to court, what they all do as even though it's supposed to be a persuasive authority, we all use decisions either of the Supreme Court of England, or if we have a Privy Council decision. That is why, remember, we never hung anybody if they were in death row for 5 years or more. Remember, we never went to court to challenge that. You know why we didn't? Because of Morgan and Pratt, which is a Jamaican case, and they, like us, still have the Privy Council as the highest court of court. And we knew that if we had gone, we would have gotten the same result, and therefore we immediately took everyone who was on death row and reverted it or turned their sentence into a life sentence. So don't play a numbers game. That is so demeaning of you. It is as if you are trying to rewrite the law.
Well,
is there a new law that's called in determining whether a decision is binding on the country, on the court? It's the game of numbers. How many people agreed, not which court majority made the decision. That is so.
When he said it, I didn't like that he said it, but I think because I'm not a lawyer, I didn't have the concrete reaction you did.
Oh my goodness.
And now that you said what you said, I wonder now, looking at it further, if the Attorney General realizes that for all intents and purposes, he is basically indirectly or unintentionally making an argument against the Privy Council being the highest court of appeal. Now, I don't know if he wants to move to the CCJ or if he wants to say our local judges should be good enough, right? Because based on the press conference, That's the implication, and it is probably very unintentional. But Mr. AG, you have to be very careful what you say.
No.
With regards to, I don't think he's
what
saying.
What is unintentional?
I don't think he's saying that our appeal court is good enough and we could replace the Privy Council with our appeal court as the highest court of the land.
No, but what he's saying is not.
I know.
No, what I'm saying. Your viewers.
But his words could be interpreted as such.
But it's nonsense.
Because he's grouping those judges together.
Okay, you know what to do then? It is nonsense. Why go to the Privy Council when the Privy Council makes a decision? Because that's our final court of appeal. Until we decide to have the CCJ, Caribbean Court of Justice, as our final court of appeal, which Barbados and Dominica and Guyana has done. When they make a decision, a majority decision, that's the end of it. So for you to demean your position as a titular head of the legal profession and talk a numbers game and talk about well, how many. I mean, who do you leave that for? That type of argument is not a scholarly argument. It is so politically ridden, and it is so nonsensical that you could bring. Keaton is trying to tell me to leave it alone.
Sean. No.
You see, that's all.
Yes, the second time you did. But
okay,
I actually like the phrase that you said, politically ridden, because that's the point I was trying to make. That was a political statement.
But what is he doing to his? What is he doing? What is Reggie Amor doing to his professional integrity, how people view him? When he is finished, you know what people are going to remember him for? For these kinds of, why say what you said?
Does anybody not remember Herbert Volney for Section 34? That's more or less what you remember him for.
Yeah, but Robert Volney was a High Court judge, and they never made him a Court of Appeal judge. So you could, God rest his soul, but then you have to wonder, why not? But we're not dealing with that. We're dealing with the court system.
Because, Reginald Amor is the current AG, one would think that the AG would be, the lawyer for the cabinet, for the state. That's the person on the cabinet where the legal advice either comes from or flows through. So we have to move forward. Now, this situation is not unconstitutional because the Constitution does not have any references to the local government, right? So when that decision was made, there's no reference to that. That's why it's unconstitutional.
No, yeah, and when I did not read the Court of Appeal decision. I don't know that at the High Court, the argument was based on judicial review, not on constitutionality grounds. I believe that when they reached at the Court of Appeal level, if my memory serves me correctly, the appellant abandoned that constitutional argument because they themselves realized, because I think that's what the Privy Council said itself, that the constitutional argument did not hold water because there were no specific provisions in our Constitution dealing with local government elections. So to do about something that was agreed by both parties as not being relevant to the question about the amendment and whether the amendment was, in my view, an executive overreach, and the Parliament and the government arrogating to itself the right of the electorate to exercise the right to vote, which is the very foundation of a democratic republic, whether at the national or local level. So if they're making a to-do about the constitutional thing, I don't know why they're doing that, because even if you read the Court of Appeal decision, they said that the appellant had understood that was a no-go.
Well, here's why, and it goes now into I think, the real question that we're still waiting the answer for. What comes next? So I've been wondering, and I've told you this just now off air, will the government seek, while the Privy Council's ruling both says that they has sections that says that they should not do this, but says also sections that they possibly could do this, should they ask for an extension? Because the Privy Council ruled, because it wasn't stated clearly, that's why they can't have the extension. But the Privy Council also,
you mean in terms of the Constitution?
No, well, no, just with regards to the ruling on the extension to the local government, right? They did say that because it was not stated explicitly, well, you can't just assume that it's there. They also did say that the government should not or cannot choose the representatives. It's part of the democratic process. So the extension could potentially be that. It could be the government saying, well, no, we want these people to continue on, right? So I just have to ask, can they?
No, but that's the whole argument.
Can they ask for an extension?
No, but that's what...
In Parliament?
No, but that is the whole argument that the majority position took. And I will say that the minority position, I read it a few times, but they took a very, and I'm not in any way critiquing them in that regard, but they took a very clinical approach to it, a very clinical. But what I think there's the majority took in, when you're doing rules of construction, there's something called the purposive rule. You know, usually they have the golden rule, all these different few rules to help you when something is not clear. You use certain rules of construction. And the purposive rule is fairly new vintage. And you really look at what is the overall purpose of the legislation. And it is clear that, so to answer your question about extending, whether they're doing the same thing that the majority told them they can't do, you cannot, the legislation, they have interpreted the legislation very clearly to say that whoever in the incumbents, whoever were voted in 2019, December 2019, as councillors and aldermen, the legislation at that time was very clear. It was 3 years. That's how long it was. Now, to extend it to 4 years, an additional year, without the electorate having a say in determining whether they want those same persons to continue is a breach of our democracy and the right of the electorate. So it's, if you go back to the parliament and use the parliament to do that, then you are, in my view, I'm trying to be very careful, it may appear as though it's a contempt of what the majority, yes, because it is clear to me, and if you read it, and I've actually had about 6 quotations from the verbatim, not my words, their words, every one of them focused on the issue of democracy and the right of the electorate, and it is not for the parliament, still less the government, to exercise that right. So if they go back to parliament and do something like allows them to do that, then they are obviously, it's really maybe a numbers game after all. And we have to go and change our, we have to go and teach our students a different approach.
Because I do think that the government at least does not seem to be ready. They wanted a whole reform to happen before the next election, or at least well on its way, and I don't think it's there yet. If they do this, what will be the recourse then? We'll have to go back to the courts to argue another case?
No. I'm sure they're spending mucho dinero and mucho tiempo. A lot of Venezuelans here, so like we should all know that meant a lot of money and a lot of time trying to find a way around the decision of the majority and not be effectively
Maybe that's why he wanted, as you said, the numbers game. Maybe that's why he wanted.
Well, no, you can't do that. You know that can't
yes,
work. But what is the end game? You have to understand the end game and how do you reach the end game. So the end game is that the government wanted another year. Why? Because they get licks in Tobago, and then look at a time when everybody thought that Kamala was a spent force, and look what happened. So they wanted a year to fix the roads, to be nice, to think, and give them a chance to win over the electorate. And so that's what they're busy doing right now. So if they could get it to go to December, they would have achieved their objective.
All I will say, folks, is
What would you say?
It's nice that that's what they want to achieve, but how they're going about it, at least to me, seems counterproductive. Now, the
We'll find out, won't we?
electorate might surprise me. Who knows? But folks, we have to break for news.